The Billionaire's Secret. Welcome back to the Storyteller's Moon, where love stories burn with passion and leave your heart aching. If you enjoy powerful romance and unforgettable characters, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss the next chapter. This story is about a young woman whose life changes forever when she meets a man of unimaginable wealth, mystery, and obsession. This is The Billionaire's Secret. Part 1. The Encounter. Naomi Bennett didn't belong under chandeliers that dripped crystal like melting ice. But unlike the other servers balancing silver trays and smiles, she hadn't come just for the paycheck. She came for data. The Drake Hotel's annual charity gala was the kind of event most of her finance professors cited without ever attending. The kind of ballroom where billionaires wrote checks with more zeros than she would earn in her first 5 years out of grad school. Naomi wasn't naive about it. This wasn't magic. It was math. A system. A storm of money that could be measured if you knew where to stand and when to watch. Her MBA thesis was about risk, specifically the difference between calculated and reckless. And who better to study than the men who made fortunes moving invisible pieces across the global board? If she had to hold a tray of champagne to get close enough to watch their patterns, so be it. The tip money wouldn't hurt either. "Keep moving," Sade whispered, gliding past with her own tray. Her curls bounced as if even gravity had learned not to touch her. "If you freeze, they'll smell you." Naomi smiled, adjusting her grip. "I'm observing." "Observe while delivering," Sade said, already charming a congressman with a flute of champagne. Naomi wove through gowns that whispered like secrets and tuxedos that fit like declarations. She noted the way people leaned in when they laughed, the tilt of a cufflink as subtle signal, the quick flash of irritation when a donor was ignored too long. It was all evidence, all texture for the puzzle she was determined to solve. How power revealed itself when it thought no one was paying attention. And then she noticed him. Julian Cross. The name carried through the room like static, whispered from one mouth to another. "Cross is here. He wasn't supposed to be. Geneva last week, the deal with Shanghai. He doesn't show up for these things." Naomi had read his name in case studies, footnotes, articles that hinted without explaining. Private, elusive, a billionaire who made his money in acquisitions so precise they were compared to surgery. Men like him didn't come to charity galas for photo ops. They came to remind the room that even gods sometimes walked among mortals. He stood near a marble pillar, broad-shouldered in a black suit that looked like it had been poured onto him. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't even performing. He simply existed. And the crowd adjusted around him like iron filings to a magnet. Naomi told herself to keep moving, to observe, not to stare. But when her tray tipped slightly and she reached to steady a flute, her gaze brushed his and locked. Julian's eyes were darker than the suit, intent as a question with only one answer. He didn't blink, didn't look away. For one impossible second, Naomi felt as if she'd been pulled into a current. Not attraction, not exactly. It was recognition. She looked away first, pulse kicking. He was a case study, nothing more. She was here for notes, not fantasies. But when the speeches began and the ballroom dimmed for the presentation video, Naomi slipped outside into the courtyard for air. Her notebook was still warm in her pocket, her pen tucked behind her ear. She needed space to breathe, to write, to make sense of the hum under her skin. The October night was sharp and honest, cooler than the glittering warmth inside. String lights looped between wrought iron arches, and the city beyond hummed its endless tune of traffic and laughter. Naomi leaned against a stone balustrade, pulled out her notebook, and scribbled, "Power is gravity. It doesn't ask to be noticed. It shifts the room until you can't look anywhere else." "Accurate," a voice said. Naomi froze. He was there. Julian Cross leaned against the opposite balustrade, as if the courtyard had been waiting for him. Hands in his pockets, posture casual, but impossible to ignore. He looked at her with the same focus as inside, as if she were the anomaly in the data set he couldn't quite account for. "You don't play the part," he said. His voice was low, smooth, unhurried. "What part?" Naomi asked, snapping her notebook shut. "The one everyone else here is auditioning for." He nodded toward the ballroom. "You're not here for them?" She lifted her chin. "And how would you know that?" "Because you look at people the way I do," Julian said, "as if they're equations you plan to solve." The words landed too close. Naomi's heart stumbled, but her mouth didn't. "And what if I already solved you?" His gaze sharpened. A fraction of a smile ghosted across his lips. "Then I'd want to see your proof." Naomi swallowed. This was not how field notes were supposed to go. She was supposed to observe from a distance, not spar with the subject. He stepped closer, not enough to touch, but enough to narrow the space between them into something that buzzed. "What's your hypothesis, Naomi Bennett?" Her stomach dropped. "How do you know my name?" "I make it my business to know who in the room isn't playing the same game." He studied her for a long moment, eyes flicking over the pen still behind her ear. "And because you interest me." Naomi's laugh was short, shaky. "I'm a grad student with a side hustle in catering. You don't even know me." "Not yet," Julian said softly. "But I will." Before she could answer, he pulled a card from his pocket and held it between two fingers. Black, heavy, embossed with nothing but his name, Julian Cross, private line. Naomi frowned. "That's not a number." "It will reach me," he said. "Any hour." She hesitated. Every rational bone in her body screamed to leave it, to walk away, to remind herself that billionaires didn't hand out numbers like candy. But her hand betrayed her, taking the card, feeling its weight. Julian's eyes didn't leave hers. "Think about what you deserve," he said quietly. "Then call." He walked back inside, leaving her alone with the string lights, her notebook, and a card that felt less like an invitation and more like a door she wasn't sure she wanted to open. Naomi pressed it between the pages of her notebook, where all her unfinished questions lived. For the rest of the night, she couldn't stop wondering if he was the answer she hadn't known she was looking for. Part 2. The Offer. Naomi told herself she wouldn't call. She lasted until morning. Not because of the glitter, not because of the card, but because a question had moved into her head and paid 3 months' rent in advance. How does a man like Julian Cross justify the word want? She dialed from a payphone outside the campus library. Privacy wasn't paranoia. It was hygiene. Naomi? He answered on the first ring, like she'd called at a prearranged time. You told me to think about what I deserve, she said. I deserve breakfast and straight answers. Then I'll feed you and be plain, he said. 20 minutes. I'll send a car. I'll take the bus, she countered. Then I'll meet you outside your building, he said, unbothered. Black coat, no tie. He was there when she arrived, exactly as described, hands in his pockets, the cold making small white ghosts of his breath. No entourage, no visible security, which meant it was the kind you couldn't see. You look like you slept, he said. You look like you don't need to, she replied. He smiled with his eyes, not his mouth. Come on. The breakfast place wasn't a skyline view or a private room. It was a south side spot where the coffee came in thick white mugs, and nobody cared about last names. He held the door, let her choose the booth, and sat opposite with the attentiveness of a man who knew money didn't impress women who respected numbers. I said I'd be plain, he began after their orders were in. So I'll start with what you already know. I notice you because you look at the world like I do. Patterns, risk, the way people telegraph intent. And because I wore a uniform and didn't perform, Naomi said. That too, he admitted. My circles are full of people who audition. You didn't. Is that why you're here instead of on your roof with someone who already speaks your language? I'm here because I'd like to speak yours. His gaze didn't waver. And because I have an offer that fits the way you move. Let's hear it. He rested his forearms on the table, a posture like a contract laid open. You want to study power? Stop doing it from the service door. Come analyze it from the inside. You're offering me... what? A job? A paid fellowship. Report directly to me, he said. Temporary? 6 months? Embedded with my deal team? Real access to negotiations, data, rooms your professors can only point at on slides. Her pulse kicked. That's not a catering tip. It's not charity either, he said. You'd earn it. You'll bring questions I want in the room. And what do you get? Naomi asked, because soft things got eaten in his world. A mind that doesn't owe me flattery, he said simply. A mirror that doesn't distort. And the personal part? She held his gaze. Because last night wasn't only professional. No, it wasn't, he said. So here's the second offer. Separate from the first. No tie between them, unless you choose it. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Good. Keep going. Personally, he said, I want time with you. Dinners, walks, silence. Yes, desire. But on terms that don't erase you. He paused, the faintest crease at his brow. I won't pretend I'm not possessive. I am. What I won't be is careless. We set boundaries together, in writing if you like. Consent is not a one-time checkbox. It's a language. The waitress slid plates between them, eggs, grits, toast that cracked when you pressed it. The ordinary food grounded the extraordinary conversation. Naomi thought of all the ways this could go wrong, and how few men acknowledged risk when they weren't the ones carrying it. You're moving fast. I move fast when I know the direction, he said. You can make me slow down. That's part of why you're here. And if I say yes to the fellowship and no to you, then I'll say congratulations and give you a desk, he replied, as if it were the most obvious sentence in the world. She sipped coffee to cover the way relief unclenched something under her ribs. And if I say yes to dinner and no to the fellowship? He held her eyes. Then I'll learn what your world feels like at your pace. And still pull every wire I can to keep you safe in it. You keep offering the word safe, she said, studying him. What's your angle? His mouth thinned, humorless. When I was 19, a man in a better suit than mine decided my mother's job didn't deserve benefits. I learned what unsafe looks like. Money became the tool I chose to humiliate that word. The truth landed with the weight of a stone in a jar. Naomi cut her toast. Okay, she said at last. Here's mine. I'm not a charity case, a fantasy, or a loophole for loneliness. I'm ambitious. I'm cautious. I'm not impressed by expensive chairs. And I don't confuse attention with love. Good, he said softly. Then I won't insult you by offering either when I mean something else. She glanced at the window, the street beyond doing its honest mourning. Draw up your fellowship terms, she said. Send them to my school email. Real HR, real pay, real timeline. I'll have the business clinic look them over. Done, he said. And the personal offer? She asked, feeling the ground of her own voice solid beneath her. Dinner tonight, public place. You sit on my side of the table and see what the bus ride home looks like. A slow, genuine smile changed his face. 7, he said. Where? She named a place that was loud enough to be safe and cheap enough to be hers. He nodded. I'll meet you there. Alone. As they stood to leave, he didn't reach for her hand. He looked like a man resisting a habit. It pleased her, more than it should have, to watch restraint work. Outside, the wind bit color into their faces. Why me? She asked quietly, one last time, because she needed a version of the answer that would hold up later when she interrogated herself. Because you look at the room and notice the thing no one else has priced correctly yet, he said. And because when I stood in a crowd of people who want things from me, you were the only person who had a question I couldn't answer. Her laugh was small and disbelieving and a little dangerous. Then do your homework, Mr. Cross. Julian, he said, as if the syllables belonged to her now. Julian, she allowed. They walked in opposite directions, the city between them, the day ahead, the question still open, and Naomi finally admitted it. Hers to grade. Part 3. The Red Night. Naomi kept her day ordinary on purpose. class, work-study, a call with Lorraine about a neighbor's new dog, and whether oxtails on sale counted as a sign from God. She answered emails. She printed a case study. She read Julian's HR packet when it arrived. Clean terms, specific scope, clear pay, an end date. No hidden clause. She sent it to the law clinic with a note. Please review. Treat me like a stranger. By late afternoon, Sade appeared with a garment bag and an eyebrow. You're not wearing that museum docent blazer to dinner with tectonic plates, she declared, pushing past to the bedroom. It's not a date, Naomi protested. It's a demonstration. Baby demonstrations need signage. Sade unzipped the bag and produced a red dress. Not a gala gown this time, but something simple, sleeveless, knee-length, cut to move if she did. Power red? The kind that looks good when you're laughing or saying no? Naomi tried it on. It felt like competency tailored. She twisted in the mirror and saw a woman who could grade her own test. Remember, Sade said, looping a thin gold hoop through Naomi's ear. You're not Cinderella. You're the building inspector. Romantic, Naomi said dryly. Buildings don't fall on my friends, Sade said. Text me your location. Send me an emoji if he weirds you out. Which emoji? Banana peel, Sade said confidently. It says slippery without saying sticky. The restaurant was noisy in the way she liked. Forks, laughter, meta-conversations about nothing and everything. Julian was already there, at a small table near the window, sleeves rolled to his forearms, like a man trying to look less like decision and more like evening. He stood when he saw her, eyes taking her in with a heat that didn't try to eat, only to memorize. You chose my side of the city, he said. I told you, Naomi replied. Homework. They ordered without performing wealth or frugality. 2 pastas, a salad meant for 4, wine poured into thick tumblers. Julian asked about her thesis and didn't pivot to himself after 1 sentence. She asked about his Geneva trip, and he described not numbers, but men. Tells, hesitations, who looked at which door, and the conversation turned. When the table rocked, he stuck a folded napkin under the leg, without calling a manager. When a child at the next table laughed too loudly, he smiled. Point to your power, she said, halfway through the salad, surprising herself. He glanced down at his hands, then out the window, where the bus stop huddled a little crowd. It isn't the money, he said. The money only finishes sentences. Power is the discipline to delay. Delay what? Everything, he said simply. Anger, appetite, revenge, praise. He met her eyes, touch. Her breath hitched. She took a sip of wine she didn't need. You're very good at sounding dangerous without raising your voice. I'm very good at not being a danger to what I want, he said. When they walked out after, he didn't steer her toward a waiting car. He matched her pace toward the bus stop, hands in his pockets, like any man content to be adjacent to a life not curated for him. People didn't look twice. It was relief and temptation both. At the corner, her bus sighed to a stop. She could feel his attention like warmth along her shoulder. Do you expect to be invited up? She asked, because naming the dynamic took its teeth. No, he said. I expect to be told what you want. I want, Naomi said, surprised at the steadiness of her voice. Another kiss like the one you asked for last night. In public, on purpose. So I know you understand the difference between intensity and secrecy. His smile wasn't a performance. It looked like a truth, allowed to come out of hiding. Then come here. He didn't drag her. He didn't crowd. He cupped her jaw and brushed his mouth over hers in a kiss that was clean and present and sure. The bus driver watched with the indulgence of a person who has seen everything. A teenager nearby whispered, "Get it, sis," and high-fived her girlfriend. The city kept time. Naomi stepped back, pulse steadying into a new rhythm. Good, she said. Now go home. Homework? He asked. Always, she said, and climbed on the bus, gripping the pole with fingers that still felt like they held a card. From the window, she watched him run a hand through his hair and laugh to himself, a movement she'd probably replay in her head when pretending to focus later. He didn't follow. He texted, "Thank you for dinner. Sleep? I'll adjust to your speed. Jay." She wrote back, "Good. I don't break for men who don't." Said sent a banana peel just because. Part 4. The Secret. The law clinic signed off on the fellowship with 4 small edits and 1 enthusiastic thumbs up. Naomi negotiated 2 of the changes herself, hours, scope of credit, and looped in a professor who'd once accused her of weaponizing clarity. He approved her independent study on the spot. Julian's office was less movie and more machine. The elevator opened into efficiency. Glass, steel, intentional quiet. He didn't parade her through. He gave her a badge, a desk, a list of names, and a non-negotiable rule. If you don't understand something, interrupt. She did. 5 times the first afternoon, and watched men twice her age recalibrate around a woman who didn't apologize for being precise. She never had to pull rank she didn't have. She only had to ask the question no one else wanted to answer. The work was intoxicating, messy, mathematical, full of the human noise case studies cleaned away. At lunch, Julian disappeared for 40 minutes. When he returned, he set a folded note by her keyboard. Your mother likes collard greens with smoked turkey, not pork. Noted. Naomi blinked. How? Then her phone buzzed with a text from Lorraine. Nice man called to ask how to make them right. Sounds polite. Suspicious. Naomi laughed out loud in a room where laughter worked like WD-40. That evening, he didn't invite her to the penthouse. He joined her at her mother's apartment with a bouquet and groceries, accepted Lorraine's side-eye like a quiz, and did dishes without permission. When he messed up the rice, he admitted it like a man who understood failure was part of belonging. He's not pretty useless, Lorraine declared later, handing Naomi leftovers in a container that had belonged to 4 generations. But don't let him skip steps. Men will try to jump to the last page because they think they already know the ending. I won't, Naomi said, and meant it. Back at his office the next day, she found the part of his world he hadn't shown. A room with no windows and a monitor that flickered with names of community partners, shelters, clinics, after-school programs. Money flowed there, quiet and unglamorous. It didn't absolve anything. It complicated everything. It made it harder to paint him with a single brush. "You wanted a secret," Julian said, appearing at her shoulder. "I wanted your truth," she countered. "This is part of it," he said. "I don't advertise it because generosity with a press release is marketing." "And the other parts?" she asked. He hesitated. "Sometimes I make decisions that hurt people I'll never meet. I make them anyway. I sleep because I've done the math, and then I donate because math doesn't feed everyone." Naomi nodded. She respected the admission more than she wanted to. "And you?" he asked. "Your truth?" She met his gaze. "I like power," she said, owning it out loud. "Not yours. The kind that comes from knowing what you're doing and doing it well. I'm not here because you're rich. I'm here because I'm good." He exhaled, tension she hadn't seen easing from his shoulders. "Good." That night, in her apartment, she wrote in her thesis journal, "He delays, I interrogate. He protects, I insist. If this works, it won't be because I was swept away. It'll be because I learned to swim in a different depth without forgetting shore." She slept like someone who had chosen the right fight. Part 5. The Choice. It happened on a Thursday. A deal turned ugly. Someone leaked. Someone lied. Someone pointed at Naomi because convenient targets are modern currency. The whisper traveled fast, intern embedded, too close to the center. She watched a man try to shrink her with a rumor and felt the old familiar choice. Duck or stand up. She stood. "Bring them all in," she told Julian, voice calm. "Conference room. Now." To his credit, he didn't ask if she was sure. He hit a button. People arrived, pale, irritated, performatively confused. Naomi spread a printout on the glass table. "Timeline," she said. "Access logs. Who opened what when. The leak happened at 2:13 p.m. from this IP." She tapped a line. "Not mine, not my floor, not even our building." Silence. Heat crawled up one man's neck. He glared at her like glare was a spell. "Anything else?" she asked, soft and edged, a scalpel wrapped in velvet. No one spoke. "Then I'll go back to work," Naomi said, and did. Later, in Julian's office, he closed the door and leaned against it, looking not at her, but at a point over her shoulder, like he needed a wall to surrender to. "I wanted to break him," he said quietly. "I know," she said. "Thank you for not." "I didn't because you looked at me," he admitted. "And I remembered the rule. Protect without caging. If I'd acted, I would have moved the story from your hands to mine." Naomi crossed to him and cupped his face, thumbs along the smooth edges of his control. "You're learning," she said. "From you," he said, and the confession didn't make him smaller. It made them level. She kissed him then, slow, sure, a decision and a declaration. When they parted, she rested her forehead to his. "I'm ready to combine the offers," she said. "Professionally, personally, with the same documents, clarity and consent." "Naomi," he breathed, the syllables a gratitude. "Not forever," she said, "because Love without terms can be a lie, not a contract you can't leave. But we write the first chapter together, on paper, in ink. He reached for the pen he kept in his inner pocket, the one that signed things that moved cities, and handed it to her. She wrote on a plain sheet, not company letterhead. I choose you, I choose me. We practice power as care and control as consent. We say stop and mean it. We say more and listen. We revisit, we revise, we stay honest, we stay kind. She signed Naomi Bennett. He signed beneath Julian Cross. No witnesses, no notary. More binding than any merger either of them had ever closed. That night, she took him to the cheap diner by the L, where the pies were suspiciously perfect, and the jukebox only knew 10 songs. He sat with her in yellow light and learned how to fold a paper fortune teller. Later, he brought her to the rooftop garden, where the city looked like 1,000 possible lives, and they chose one for now. When she finally let him undress her, it was not a conquering. It was an earned access, a conversation written on skin. He asked, she answered, she asked, he answered. They found a pace that felt like a third music, one they made together, a language that could be spoken again tomorrow and changed without breaking. After, they lay quiet, the city's pulse coming through the glass. Do you still want me on your deal team? She asked, drowsy and content. More than before, he said. I'm better when you ask questions I don't think to. And when I tell you no? I'll be grateful for the boundary, he said. I'll learn where to put my hands. She smiled into his shoulder. Good answer. He kissed her hair. You taught it to me. Morning came like it always does. Alarm, coffee, emails. Naomi texted Sada, heart and a banana peel, and got back 17 exclamation points and a link to a new red lipstick. Lorraine sent a photo of collards, simmering, and a text. He showed up to help an old lady carry groceries. Still suspicious. But the greens are right. Naomi slipped the signed sheet into her thesis notebook. Not as proof, no reader would ever see it, but as a reminder that the paper that mattered most was the one she wrote for herself. On her way out, she paused at the mirror. She still saw the woman who had walked into a ballroom with a tray and a plan. She also saw the woman who had walked out with the one thing the chandelier couldn't buy. A life negotiated on her terms. At the curb, a car waited. Not because she needed one, but because he wanted to make the world gentler where he could. She got in because she wanted to make it better where she could. Good morning, Julian said, not like a CEO, but like a man who had decided mornings could be shared. Good morning, she said, and kissed his jaw, then opened her laptop. Now hush. I have a model to debug. He laughed and obeyed. Outside, Chicago selected a color and stuck with it. Inside, they wrote their next page, not with chandeliers, but with choices. End. Thank you for listening to The Billionaire's Secret, here on the Storyteller's Moon. If you love this story of passion, power, and a woman writing her own rules, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next tale of love and obsession. What would you do if someone like Julian Cross made you an offer? Let us know in the comments below.